is a wraparound approach to maximizing career and life engagement. So check to see if you're in the right session. Is that the one you wanted? So that's the title. And Roberta has been introduced, so I'm not going to do much introduction. I'm just going to tell you one little piece of interesting information. So there was 1 year, I think very recent, like maybe last year, that Roberta was celebrating a special birthday. And to celebrate that special birthday, she decided to travel to every continent in the world, which she did. So there we go.
Wasn't just random. There were conferences on most of those continents. I would love it if, I know people settle where they want to settle, but I would love it if you'd move like a little bit closer, because it's going to be super difficult to maintain eye contact with people when it's sort of one person at a table. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment and just, moving up to more the front of the room, I'd sure appreciate it. Because otherwise, it feels like you're speaking to an empty room, and I know it isn't, but it's just how you're dispersed. So even though you're seeing the same sort of title slide and It Takes a Village, which was my keynote, this is sort of the carry-on from my keynote. It's not going to be the same as the keynote at all. But what I want to do is really dig a little bit more deeply into what that kind of a wraparound approach might be in terms of maximizing engagement, and talk a little bit about our career engagement theory that we have. It's really more of a model, but the model that we've developed that has been picked up now by the constructivist theorists, and they've asked us to submit a chapter to their book. And so that's nice to know that we may have a theoretical home now for this model. So what we'll do is talk a little bit about the context of our sector, what's going on in our sector we've been hearing about at the conference, but also just how the world is changing. Then I'll introduce the career engagement model. And then some ways of applying the model in a variety of different settings. So some frontline work, but some of you I know are managers and will be influential in developing programming, for example. And so the model might give you a good conceptual framework for some programming. And some of you are more senior leaders than that, or policy people. And the model also might help you conceptualize policies and sort of strategic plans that are going to maximize engagement. So it's a model that can be used at an individual level, but also at a systems level. So when we think about lifelong career development, I think it's really important to ask ourselves the question, are we walking our talk? Are we actually doing what we try to get other people to do? And I know that in research that I've done with career practitioners across the country, we don't often walk our talk. That in fact, we hear very often from career practitioners, oh no, we don't have a budget for that training, or my employer won't let me, or I can't do something. My career development, my training related to career development has rarely been employer driven. I mentioned in my keynote yesterday that one employer showed me a little ad and said, you should take this course. But that was the end of it. Like, it wasn't, oh, I'm going to pay for you to take this course, or I'm going to give you release time to take this course. Instead, the program sort of took over my life. But having said that, I have rarely paid for professional development, like formal education in my life. I did my first degree fully on a scholarship from my dad's union. And then I realized that if I wrote government scholarship exams, I could actually make money at it, because I got to use that money then toward living expenses. So I had my first degree paid for, but through scholarships. My second degree, very similarly, every month or every term, as long as I kept my grades up, then I was eligible for grad fellowships that funded the next term. And then for my PhD, I was on faculty. I was working for the university And so I had my fees reduced by the amount that I was working. So I had 0.8 of a full-time position, because I'll never give anyone 100% because I like my gigs. But, you know, my fees were reduced by 0.8. So I really encourage you in terms of your own professional development to not leave it up to your employers to say what you can do or when you can do it or how you can do it. Because if I did that, I'd probably be a frontline practitioner still, right? Like I'd be waiting for somebody somewhere to come up with a budget to help me move forward. But instead I've found, I'm pretty cheap, and so I've found, you know, all sorts of creative ways of getting education paid for. Sometimes I've paid for training. I do personality dimensions, true colors, and what I did when I was getting training there is I just made sure I had aligned some work that was going to pay for that training. So if I invested in training, did I have some work coming up that was going to more than pay for that training? And so I've been very, very strategic. I'm a business person about growing opportunities for training. Or I've volunteered. You know, you can volunteer at conferences and then you get, you know, some reduction of fees or some opportunities to come in and help. So there's lots of ways of doing it. But we know that people are feeling kind of stuck, especially with tight budgets. So the current context right now that we're working in and why we need ongoing professional development is the context of rising anxiety in children, youth underemployment, the Indigenous underemployment and incarceration crisis. Like the numbers are just so wildly overrepresented in underemployment and incarceration, and there's no good reason for that at all, except that, you know, we need some better interventions and some better opportunities. We have much more of an increase in the presentation that Cassie led yesterday. She talked about a startling increase in dual career couples compared to, you know, several decades ago. And so that's created all sorts of complexity in terms of how families juggle their family lives with careers. We've got a huge increase in single parent families and the complexity of being the only parent that is going out to work, earning the money to support the family, and then when do you fit professional development in around that? And so that's a real change. We've got, especially in Alberta, fly-in jobs. So where people are leaving their families behind for chunks of time, going off and working somewhere else. And we know the advantages that can bring, but also the incredible tension that can create within families and the problems. And there's lots of families that just will not do that. And so it's a changing way of working. We've got lots of diversity in our workplace, and some of that is amazing and wonderful, especially for someone like me who's fascinated with diversity, and some of it is just plain awful for people who are not treated well in their workplaces. And I think as career development people, we have a really important role to play, not just with our individual clients, but with the workplaces that need to welcome those clients. And I did some work in British Columbia a couple of years ago with a Welcoming Communities initiative where I went around the province, not to speak to frontline practitioners. I'd be speaking to the choir. You all embrace diversity. But I needed to speak to the employers who were creating some pretty toxic work environments for people to come into. And so we need to, when we're working with our clients, to be sure that we're not setting them up for something that's going to be horrific. Some colleagues of mine were doing some presentation on the real push to STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math careers. And they said, you know, yes, absolutely, it's important to provide equal opportunities for women. But have you seen how women are treated in some of those organizations? Is it morally okay for us to be encouraging young women to pursue careers where they're going to face incredible abuse and not be cared for? Now, that's not to write off a profession, and that's not to say don't do it. One of my own daughters became a gas turbine helicopter engine test cell technician, so she was the person that rejected the engines after all the men had fixed them. And that was not a popular position for a little 19-year-old ballerina, but she did it. and she had graduated top of her class, had the option to work anywhere she wanted within this organization that had 300 men working there and 7 women. And so the office thought that she might like a job in the office because that'd be a nice place for her to be. And she said, no. I learned to fix helicopter engines. I don't want to work in the office. And so she got this job in the test cell, but was not treated well by men when she was rejecting their faulty helicopter engines. Those of us that are passengers in helicopters would be really glad for her attention to detail. But she ended up having to give that job up when she wanted to get pregnant and didn't want flying helicopter parts around and toxic fumes to damage the baby that was growing inside of her. So people make career decisions and they move into careers that are possible, but are they good? And so there's a lot of talk these days around good work and what would be good work for the clients that you're working with. And so I think that as career practitioners, there's a lot for us to think about when we're listening to our clients and what their goals are and where they'd like to go and what they're excited about. We need to listen to them, but also be able to inform them in some kind of a meaningful, intelligent way about how to find out what's going on in the different workplaces that they might be interested in. Of course, there's a huge emphasis right now on gig jobs, on gig work, and precarious work. And sometimes gig work is linked with precarious work. But as you heard from my keynote yesterday, it's not always precarious work. I've created a pretty predictable, solid income for a lot of years. I've been doing this for more than 40 years. And it's been on gigs. So I've probably had more employment security because I'm not depending on income from any one government program or project or one employer. I've had multi-sources of income. So it's not that gigs are bad, but precarious work is pretty awful. I wouldn't have wanted to, be trying to raise a family and be committing to mortgage payments and stuff like that if I wasn't sure that there would be income coming in, 2 weeks from now. And so part of what allowed me to have my crazy career was that I had a partner who had a very stable career. And until my business grew to the point that it offered a stable career for both of us, at that point my husband actually left his banking career and joined my company. But until then, I always knew that there was going to be money there to feed our kids and pay our, bills. And my money came in more periodically. So it's really important for career counselors and practitioners to understand those realities and to be able to have talks about money and all of the things that your mom told you shouldn't be talking to people about. As a career practitioner, I need to have those conversations. Like, what do you need to earn? How much? What lifestyle are you hoping to have? And how can we help you get there? What do you know about that kind of work? What do you know about the reputation of that organization? Who do you know that's gone into certain careers? How have they found it? And is that the same as you? Because people make decisions around, my friend hated the job, so it's a really bad job. It might have been a really bad job for your friend. It might not be a really bad job for you. And so we need to be able to help our clients expand their thinking. The impact of technology and AI, there's just incredible fear right now around that. And yes, some jobs will be lost. Absolutely. Some jobs should be lost. When I was a telephone operator, I liked the cord board. That's why we put that in the picture in my keynote. What I didn't like was the ONI board. There's letters for you. So the ONI board was operator number identification. And I was paid to sit in a chair with a little keyboard that was just the size of your phone, number pad, and I'd say, your number please, and type in a 10-digit number for 7.5 hours a day. That wasn't fun. The corporate was fun because you could plug people into each other and get them all confused, and it was really interesting. Like, it was active, it was experiential. I didn't like the fleas in the corporate. That part wasn't so fun. I got flea bites every time I sat there, but the plugging things in, that was really cool. But the operator number identification was just boring. Another really boring job that should be replaced by automation, when I was in Moscow, which has work for everybody, I was in a hotel that was not a tourist hotel. It was a Russian hotel. One of my Russian colleagues booked me in. It was much cheaper than the tourist hotels, but a little weird. And so it was this cement sort of Soviet block built around a court. When we think of courtyard, we think of something pretty, but it was built around an airspace in the middle, right? So the whole hotel was in this rectangle around a hollowed out inner place. And you go up in the elevator, and for saving electricity, the lights were off in the hallways until you got there, and then they were motion activated. And when the lights came on, when you got off the elevator, there was somebody sitting there at a card table with a box of chocolates in front of her and a fridge behind her with cock in it. And there was one of those people sitting in the dark unless somebody came up in the elevator and activated the motion lights at every corner on every floor. So that's job creation for you. Let's say it was 30 stories high. There's 120 jobs, 24 hours a day, so, times 3, 7 days a week, so you're getting a few more than that in there. It's probably employing 500 people. Good job creation. Is that a job you would want? Sit in the dark, wondering if somebody who gets off that elevator might today need a chocolate bar or a pop. Like, that's what vending machines are for, right? So when we think about, the fear around technology and AI and it's taking jobs away, we can also think about the quality of life that it's actually improving, because there's people creating that technology. There's opportunities to do things with my life because I'm not sitting there doing all the things that technology does for me. PowerPoints are so much easier to do with technology than when I was hand coloring, overhead slides. I don't feel any less as an educator because I now have access to PowerPoint. So I think we need to, as career practitioners, get away from the fear of some of these things, critically look at them, say, is this a good idea or not? I know I could teach people for the rest of my life without ever seeing them again. Do I want to do that? No. I love the hugs I get at this conference, right? I love it when I was in a group with you guys learning from you face to face about where you live and what you're doing. I would never want to not have an opportunity to do that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for the online teaching that I do, or the self-directed stuff I do, or that we've got webinars that people can listen to if they just need a specific piece of information. So it's how do we integrate technology and artificial intelligence into meaningful work so that it allows us to do work that's more enriching. We also, of course, I'm a prime example of this, have the aging population. And so the aging population is doing things a little bit differently than they did before. So I remember when my parents were this age, they were old. I don't think I'm old. Talk to my daughters, they'll tell you I'm old. But I have friends that are 10 years older than me, 15 years older than me, that are still working and productive and excited about what they do. So do we want that to have to be the case for everyone? No, a lot of people have, burned out their bodies physically, doing carpet laying and stuff like that. So there's lots of reason that we would want people to be able to leave the workforce earlier. But I think in the future we're going to see a variety of, career paths and people doing a little bit of work or working a little less. My husband, when he was alive, used to co-present with me and do the financial piece, and I do the career piece. And he coined the term semi-leisure. He said, people don't want to think about being semi-retired. That sounds old, but what they want is to free up some leisure time. They want more control over their time. And so when you think about the aging population, think about how can we welcome them into the workforce. I'm going to be speaking in Vietnam in a couple of weeks with a colleague who's doing her PhD in Australia on how to really enrich the careers of older workers rather than marginalizing them. And so she's doing her research, talking to people who've retired but still have something left to give, and how can we incorporate them and incorporate their knowledge. We also, of course, have people that are choosing to retire. I chose to retire 2 years ago. I'm not doing such a good job at that, actually. But I left my real job as associate dean, and ever since I left that job, I've had the same experience as everyone else I know who's retired. People come up to me and say, I look younger, because all the stress has gone from having that, commitment and all this stuff, that rises to the top when you are in an administrative role. But retirement is looking really different for people right now, and we have to help them become fully engaged in their lives and picture what retirement might be in their specific context. Now, one of the tools that we have, that I briefly mentioned yesterday, that will help us at all of those ages, from the very youngest of children right through to the older workers in retirement, are these pan-Canadian global competencies. Picture this. The ministers of education from all across Canada, every province and every territory, agree on something. Can you even imagine? Like that would have been quite the project. Because I did a competency project with the ministers from the Atlantic provinces alone, like just 4 provinces. And it took us years to get agreement on anything. So I'm pretty wowed by these global competencies. And what they said is everybody, children, adults, retired people, these are defined as school to work transition competencies, but they're global competencies that we have not done our job if we haven't equipped people to be good critical thinkers and problem solvers. So this applies to you, whether you're working in a school or in a community or in a leadership role or in any setting, in a management position. It applies to me as the owner of a company. I need to equip my people to be good critical thinkers and problem solvers. It's an essential competency. But what is relatively new that I hadn't seen in the competency frameworks I've been looking at over the years, like we've seen critical thinking and problem solving on the business, ones that come out from the Conference Board of Canada, is this real focus that we're seeing everywhere right now on innovation, on creativity, and entrepreneurship. This doesn't mean everyone's going to start a business, but this means that I know in Alberta, probably in the 90s, you were doing stuff on entrepreneurship, and it's not even that, but it's saying we need to equip everybody to be innovative, to be creative, to take an entrepreneurial approach to figuring out how things get done. Dave Redekop and I were talking in the car the other day. He picked me up at the airport, saying that a problem in some of the communities is that there is no, somebody needs training, you get them on the wait list for training, but then there they sit waiting for training to happen. And that happens everywhere, but it happens specifically in some of the more rural and remote communities. But why I say it happens everywhere is it really depends on the training. I was just talking to someone in the break that's wanting to get into a master's program. Well, I can't get them into a master's program starting tomorrow. So there will be an application process that the deadline will be in December, the decisions will be made in February, the program will start a year from September. And so what do you do with somebody who essentially has a year and a half before he can begin the training that would be relevant training that would move him forward on his career path? And I think that's a place for career practitioners to get really innovative and creative and entrepreneurial. So how do we help build into someone's plan? It's not a done deal just because, okay, we figured out that you want to register for this program, you got the marks, looks like you'll get in. But how do we figure out a reasonable plan for the year and a half in between that will be meaningful, that will keep them moving forward, that will prepare them well for life during the program and after the program. So that's where these competencies, I think, are extremely important for you, but also important for you to share with your clients. Then there's a competency that really touches my heart as an educator on learning to learn, self-awareness and self-direction. So as career practitioners, we've often engaged people in self-assessment activities and reflecting on who they are. But this is linked with learning to learn and looking at it as a core competency. So it's not us administering some self-assessments and giving people some answers, but it's us equipping people to check in with themselves, to monitor where they're at, what's working, what's not, what could I change, what do I need to change. So So it's thinking very, very differently on an ongoing basis. And I do that myself quite regularly. Like at an annual level, I choose a word to focus on. So my word this year is nurture, and I create a wordle with all sorts of things that I'd like to nurture. Other years it's been other words, whatever I want to focus on for the year. But I have it posted right beside my computer where I spend a great deal of my time, and look at that word and ponder it, and then I build right into my day timer. What are the things that are important to me that I want? Well, I don't have a day timer anymore, but with that little thing in Outlook with tasks on it. But I build in, it's important to me to be nurturing relationships with friends. So I get really busy and I travel a lot, but I schedule intentionally 2 social things each week. I wanted to be more fit. I've built that into my life. I wanted to return to playing the piano. I've been moving this stupid piano around with me for 50 years, and finally I've gone back to take piano lessons in the last year. And I don't have enough time to practice as much as my piano teacher would like, and that's okay. I practice when my eggs are boiling. I practice when my coffee is in the microwave heating up. You can get through short songs in a minute and a half. And so what I'm doing is building things in that work for my life, but that are intentionally fitting with these goals that I have. And if as career practitioners, we look at career as life, those are fair game for us to be talking about with our clients. How are we helping our clients to stay resilient? How are we helping our clients to be motivated? How are we helping our clients to be excited? How are we helping our clients to see that what they're doing matters and where it fits in the community? What community projects could we have people involved in before they get the training and the education, where they're going to be building community connections, and the minute they graduate, somebody's super excited to be able to hire them because they already know who they are. So all of those things, how many of you, I know some people went to see the Grizzlies last night. Anyone in the room? There were a few of you. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? No? No? Okay. Some people said they did and some didn't, so I'm sorry.
It was just different for myself.
Yeah.
There was a lot of churches, so it was really emotional.
Yeah.
So you kind of lose the village created.
Sure. Yeah.
I lost that, so it took a while.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that ahead of time because it does actually have a trigger warning right at the beginning of the movie.
So it was a difficult film to watch. There was a lady from the conference that came to sit with us.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Jane. And I think I kind of traumatized her.
Oh dear.
It was really serious.
Yeah, it was.
And so it's kind of different to, if you haven't lived it or experienced it or lived in that environment, then I really don't think you get it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to minimize it for anybody else, but that's what I thought. So it took like the whole evening to come down from that and try to see that positive thing. It's positive. It's a good movie.
No, I really appreciate you saying that because I presented it lightly, and now that you say that, I was triggered as well, and the person I was with had to walk me to my car and make sure I was okay because I had a brother died by suicide, and so it's definitely something that is hard. It's meaningful though. I'm really grateful that it's in the theaters, and so it was just in that setting, one of the things that we wouldn't think of as a career development solution was starting a lacrosse team, right? Like I would never have thought of that as something I ought to be doing as part of my work, and yet that was the solution to turning things around for a group of people, and it was because it was his gift. It was what he was able to do and what he loved. But we all have gifts. We all, some of you are quilters, some of you are mechanics, some of you are really great at cooking. Whatever it is that you do, you can actually turn into a career development activity and be engaging people in learning life skills and building community and learning innovation and picking up on all of these competencies through some activity that doesn't involve sitting down and filling in workbooks and worksheets and, doing cold calls when you know darn well that there's no jobs in the community, and it's just making people do something that's going to be frustrating. So I just encourage you to think creatively of the ways that we can build competencies. Collaboration. There are endless ways that we can engage people in collaborative projects. And these are career development competencies. So it doesn't have to be a career activity. You can have people collaborating on building, wooden models. You can have people collaborating on Lego. Like there's a whole business now called Lego Play. It's legitimate to be engaging people in activities that are going to build collaboration skills. Communication. Any opportunity you have to be able to develop the communication capacity of your clients is building an employability skill. And so how can you let them present on your behalf? How can you let them introduce each other? When I was up in Iqaluit and needed to be developing these skills with the people I was working with up there, I invited in a bunch of guest speakers, but had my students introducing each of those guest speakers and giving gifts to each of the guest speakers and just saying little things at a time, but they were building that competency of being comfortable talking in front of a group and talking to other people. So there's lots of really natural ways that we can be building these competencies rather than a course on communication or offering a workshop on it. And then there's this bigger notion of global citizenship and sustainability. And so when we think about global citizenship, of course it takes us to caring for our land and caring for the people around us. But it also helps us recognize our interconnectedness with people and places that are very far away from here. And so we're able to see ourselves as part of a larger whole and co-sharing the responsibility for caring for our planet. So those global competencies, I think, are really helpful when we look back to this previous, I'm not going to go all the way back, but to the previous slide. The other thing as career development practitioners, I think that we need to be more aware of the full age range of clients that are getting career development services. So at the AGM this morning, a principal of a school was talking about how right from K to 12, children are being exposed to career development and getting career information. My little 7-year-old grandson, as I was heading off to the airport the day before yesterday, was figuring out what it is I do for work. And I shared this with some of you. So you fly to countries around the world and you go to meetings. Yeah, pretty much what I do. That's your job, he said. So your job is to, and so that's age appropriate. I'm not going to have a conversation with him about what I really do, but my 12-year-old granddaughter, I took over to China with me, and she co-presented at a conference with me, and got a much better insight into what I do, and also got to learn some skills, some presentation skills, and some global competency skills, and I realized that that's not normal. I realize that that's not something everybody's going to get to do, but I'm her Nana, and it's something I do, and it's something I could include her in, and so within the context of our family, it was a really cool thing to do. And she knows way more about history than I do, so I gave her an opportunity to teach me things. When I said, what would you like to do? We could go to the Forbidden City. And she said, so what dynasty is that from now? I don't know. Let me look it up on my phone and figure it out. And so we learned together. But in your community, it might be in one of our workshops, a grandma was teaching her granddaughter how to make bannock. That was really special. And in other workshops, it might be, that somebody is talking, or you bring in parents with little children, and parents talk about the occupations they have. Or grade 9 is bring your kid to work, day. And you take a grade 9 student into the office and help them understand. So there's going to be different interventions at different ages. With elementary school, with smaller children, it's really career awareness. The tourist to the fire hall, the tourist to the airport, are sort of helping people understand what jobs are out there in the community. Up in Nunavut, very interesting series of books have been written as part of a literacy project, I think, but they're jobs, and for the young kids, it's just a single word on the job. You know, like it's a storybook with a picture of somebody in one word for the early readers. And then for the older kids, it's more of a description of the job. But it's integrating career with the very real jobs that people are going to see locally. So that's something that you can be doing in any of your communities, building some resources on what's the real work that's being done, and just do some little videos and create some YouTube stuff. In middle school, we want to move beyond career awareness to giving them the skills to be able to explore careers. And then by the time they get into high school, we're trying to help them prepare for careers. And then by the time they get to post-secondary, we're trying to help them with their work search and job development skills. And so it's not one size fits all. And we have to recognize that with some of our adult clients, we're going to have to start at the very beginning. So remember the old blueprint, it took away the ages and actually said these are just the stages, because we're going to have some adult clients that haven't really taken time for career awareness. They've been in one job since they were 16 years old. Now physically they can't do that job anymore. Let's explore what the other options may be. If we think about this in the workplace, it's a little bit different. Employers use different language, and so they talk about attracting employees, recruiting, onboarding, developing, retaining, and separating or terminating employees. And so as career people, we have something to say or offer in each of these stages. So if we want employers to listen to us, and some of you said today that your role is much more with employers, then use employer languages. Talk in language that employers understand. And so if you know they're interested in attracting employees, then talk about how having a career development program within the organization is going to be attractive to people, that they're interested in working for organizations that can help them plot out their career. If they're interested in recruiting, how can you help them reach out to people? How can you do some of the pre-screening of your clients, as someone mentioned in the consultation we just had? Those are all things that will support recruitment. So use the language recruitment, but talk about how your career development piece can really feed in and make their recruitment more easy. The onboarding process is where people are learning a little bit about the organization. And so as career people, how can you help with that onboarding process? Can you come in and do a workshop at that point, helping people to manage their careers within the organization? Can you offer a career program or mentorship or something that will sort of help them stay established with the organization? And so at all of those points, there's services that you can offer. So that brings us back to this concept of it takes a village. Our work will always focus on individuals. That's not going to be gone. It's what I love doing. It's what I loved doing back in 1978. It's what I love doing now. It's not going to be gone. But we may work with our individuals in different settings. I've worked with individuals in community-based organizations. I've worked with individuals in schools. I've worked with individuals in colleges and universities. I've worked with individuals on their midterm retreats in Bali and Thailand. That was a cool job. I've worked with individuals who are in leadership positions in organizations, helping them with career development and coaching. So you can work with individuals in a whole lot of different settings, not just the ones the government happens to fund. You can work with families. How can you help families become better career coaches for their kids, better advocates for their kids? How can you help families work together to support career development? And so you can be doing workshops, community events, all sorts of ways of engaging those very significant influencers. How can you work with educators? So we don't necessarily need to do the role of educators, although often as career practitioners we are the educators, but we could educate the educators. We could behind the scenes be helping teachers do a better job of integrating career into their curriculum. We could be developing some resources that would be useful for educators. We can be on speed dial for educators when questions come up. They could call the career practitioner in the community to get answers to those questions. So there's lots of ways that we can without having to be in the classroom ourselves. We can interact with community leaders. A lot of communities are interested in community capacity building and how do we do more economic development, how do we bring work into our community, how do we build the capacity amongst the people in our community to do the work that we've brought in. And so we can be working with our community leaders to get some insights about, who are they trying to bring in as major employers? How can we develop some programs and prepare to help them? Saudi Arabia is an interesting example. In Saudi, of course, it's a kingdom, and so in a kingdom, a king can just sort of say something will happen, and it will, sometimes in more pleasant ways than others. But one of the things when Dave Redkop and I were over in Saudi Arabia that was interesting is we read headlines in the newspaper one day that within 6 months, the cell phone industry was going to be what they call sawdust. So local people were going to be equipped to work in the cell phone industry. In Saudi Arabia at that time, just a few years ago, 80% of the work was being done by foreigners. So we have a lot of immigrants here, but can you imagine if 80% of the work in a country is being done by people outside your country, then what are the people inside your country doing? Right? So the parents there had the same problems with unemployed youth as we do. There were a lot of unemployed youth sitting around on couches at home making their parents crazy. The difference was that they had a lot more money, so they were buying fancy cars and doing crazy things with their cars and dying by crashing these cars. And so they needed to find a way of changing the relationship with work. And part of that is to normalize that more careers are acceptable for Saudi people to do. Because, do any of you remember the Beverly Hillbillies? Okay, so I have to say that when I was in Saudi Arabia, it just reminded me of the Beverly Hillbillies. And not in a nasty way at all, but it was that sense of, the oil bubble went up and they moved to Beverly, right? And so that's what happened in Saudi Arabia, that not that long ago, they were a nomad desert nation. In fact, in the 1900s, nobody else in the world, when they were dividing up the Middle East, nobody else wanted Saudi Arabia. And that's why you've got Dubai and Qatar and all the smaller Bahrain all around. Those coastal communities were worthwhile. They were port communities. And so people took that, but this sandbank in the middle of the country nobody wanted. And that's Saudi Arabia. And then the oil bubbled up. And they got rich fast. But they got rich fast without role models, without a sense of, what do you do with this wealth? And without a sense of how do you do the work that needs to be done in a developing country. But they had enough money that they could bring in other people to do that work. And so they did, and that's very much like the Beverly Hillbillies, right? Like they, brought in other people, they bought a beautiful home, they did all of that, but they didn't ever really get it. And so that's where Saudi is at right now with their 2030 plan, is how do we equip the Saudi people to value more than government jobs and professional careers. There's other work that needs to be done, and how do we get people in? So this was the day of saying the cell phone industry is going to be sawdust within 6 months. And Dave and I looked at each other and thought, what? How do you do that? How do you equip people to be able to work in an industry where they've got no experience at all? And this is going to happen in 6 months. Like, give me a break. The next day, we've identified, I can't remember how many jobs, 24 jobs, 50 jobs, 60, it doesn't matter. The training can be accomplished within 6 months. And we've talked to our vocational and educational training centers, and they have training available starting now that people will graduate in 6 months. And so they put the infrastructure in place to do the training that then would equip people to graduate and be ready to do the jobs within 6 months. We went back 6 months later, the cell phone industry was sawdust. It was amazing. And so that's where I'm saying you can be working with your community leaders. It would have been helpful if I was a career person really living and working in Saudi to have those conversations like more than 6 months ago, that this is coming down the stream, right? This is what we want to do, because it would take time to build those programs and get the supports in place and do train the trainer and that kind of thing. So our job there was training career practitioners, because they realized when they had more careers available, they were going to need people to help people make career decisions. But they were thinking ahead. I was there, 2-3 years ago, and they're thinking ahead to 2030. And so building capacity, and as career people, we've got a lot to offer there. Then also working with mentors and role models. Mentors and role models are a better place than we are sometimes to be having career conversations with people. And so how do we equip them to have good career conversations? And how do we work with employers? And you've heard, heard that before. And then policymakers, influence policymakers. So our career engagement model, I briefly introduced the other day, and you've got handouts, I believe, on your table that look a little bit like this. The career engagement model was something that we developed, influenced by some other models that I'm going to show you in a minute, but essentially the traffic light colors are intentional. Green is where you want to be, red is where you don't want to be. And as you move out of that green zone through yellow, orange to red, you've actually got some early warning indicators that something's going wrong. And so if you are moving out of the green zone in your own career, what are some of your early warning indicators? I'm going to get you just at your table groups to say, how do you know when you're becoming overwhelmed? You're not completely overwhelmed. Or how do you know when you're sliding toward feeling underutilized? What are some of the early warning indicators you get? Just take a couple of minutes and chat with people at your table. I'm interested in hearing just a few examples, because I think people have different early warning indicators. So let's start with overwhelmed. How do you know you're feeling overwhelmed? You're beginning to slip that way. Anxiety, and how does that surface for you? Okay, so sometimes when you can't even figure out where to start on something, that's an early warning indicator that you're getting anxious. Yeah, what are some other ones? Yeah.
Tension, like for me, if I'm overwhelmed, I can carry it on my shoulders, instead of like walk hard.
Yeah. And so it's learning. I mean, that's that self-awareness competency, isn't it? It's learning to notice when that's happening so that you don't have to wait until you're completely flat in bed and think, oh yeah, now I can look back. Okay, what are some other early warning indicators of being overwhelmed? Absolutely. So just being generally nasty. Yeah, that's a good thing.
I think for both G and Green, we've never met each other in both person. That the feeling of, I can't remember who you are.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I was supposed to do for you. I don't remember.
Yeah.
When you met somebody at 9 o'clock, you were 90 years old, and you're stopping at 3 p.m.
Yeah, so it's when your brain is full. Yeah, when there's just too much going on. Okay, did any of you talk about the opposite side, when you're starting to feel underutilized? Because the symptoms can actually be the kind of the same, right? Like, I don't know who you are. I don't remember seeing you before. And so what are some indicators that you're actually becoming underutilized too?
Conversations that happening around you that are important that you see and not a part of.
Oh, okay. So you're feeling a bit excluded or isolated from important conversations, yeah.
Feeling apathetic, where you were like you're not as passionate about it anymore.
Yeah.
Deadlines, if it gets done, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
that's what's kind of keep happening.
Yeah, exactly. So we're starting to feel a bit of apathy. Withdrawing, not volunteering for things. Yeah. So if you can start to pay attention to those early warning indicators, they might be physical, they might be emotional, they might be cognitive, mental, but you can stop yourself from moving to the point of being fully disengaged, which is a good thing. Because if we could get a nice graphic designer that could do this as a cylinder for us, disengaged is the same point, right? When you're disengaged, you're disengaged. It doesn't look any different. And so when you're seeing a client who's disengaged, and I know many of you do see clients who are disengaged, you need to figure out how they got there. Because the route to disengagement is really significant. If a client got disengaged from being underutilized, Your job is to up the challenge. If they got disengaged by being overwhelmed, you need to reduce the challenge or build capacity. And if you do the opposite, you're going to send them right over the deep end, right? Like if they're already disengaged from being overwhelmed, and now you give them more of a challenge, oh my gosh, there's a trigger for you, right? But if they got there from being underutilized and you missed that, and so you're taking away even more challenge from them, saying, oh, let me help you out here, then you've made them more disengaged. So the route to disengagement is really important. Very briefly, there's a lot of talk about employee engagement, so this is where you can overlap with employer language. I'm not going to spend time there, but ours probably fits a little bit more with the resources piece of it. The student engagement literature also has a lot of information about engagement, looking at the feelings around it, the behavior around it, also the cognitive piece. Career success and job satisfaction, when I was doing my doctoral research, optimism was the single best predictor of career success and job satisfaction. And so optimism, we know through the literature, has been linked to engagement, interest, curiosity, enthusiasm. Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow was very influential to us. You'll see the challenges on the left, skills on the bottom. But what the challenge I had with Csikszentmihalyi's model was this notion of it being fully linked to skills. Because that means if someone's disengaged, you just upskill them a little bit and everything will be okay. It's fully blaming the individual. And I think that it's not just the individual that's responsible for whether they're engaged or not, but it's their context. And so you'll notice on our career engagement model, we've talked about capacity on the bottom. The other influence for us comes from my background in educational psychology, Vygotsky's work. I'm happy to send slides to anyone who wants. Vygotsky's work on the zone of proximal development. And so what he talked about was you need to hit people within the zone if you're going to be able to teach them anything. If you aim too high, you just create anxiety and they can't learn. And if you aim too low, they're bored and they're not going to learn. So you've all seen that with kids and with clients, with youth that you're working with. And so we really need to find that zone where we're actually going to be able to do something with them. And I think that's crucial for us in career engagement. That the zone, that's why we've got the dotted line in there. You don't just get engaged and stay engaged and carry on in your merry engaged way. On a daily basis, you're bouncing around out of being engaged and disengaged. Every time I check my cell phone, I'm moving from being engaged to disengaged because something new has happened. And so we need to, and it jumps around way more than this. We just couldn't graphically portray, how it goes up way up and then it goes way down and we go to the other side. So our goal is to try to stay within the zone. And the way to do that is to be unpacking capacity and challenge and saying, what are we in control of adjusting, what can we not adjust, and how do we do it? So the little handout that I gave you fits with these tips for supporting engagement. And so if you're working with an individual, you can do individual career engagement, but we also have similar pamphlets for working with organizations and policymakers. So the first thing to do is monitor your career engagement. So just like I had you paying attention to right now, looking at the early warning signs. What's going on for you? Are your shoulders getting tense? Are you breathing differently? Are you finding yourself really grumpy with people around you? Pause, reflect, name it, because that's the first step for getting back into engagement. So you need to monitor it. We have developed an assessment tool. The assessment tool I don't find particularly useful, so we don't even share it with people. It's more about conversation and monitoring and getting a sense of what's going on. Then, it's not just getting a sense of it, but it's reflecting more deeply. What's working, what's not? Why am I this grumpy? Why have I got that tension in my shoulders? Why did Roberta send me to a movie that was going to trigger me right in the middle of a conference? That's really good learning for me. I'm so sorry. But you reflect and you say, okay, how did I find myself in that position, and what would I do differently next time? And please But I'll for sure be reflecting on that. That's another thing that I should have mentioned. So you reflect on what's working and what's not, and what's moved you closer to engagement or further away from it. When do you feel more engaged or more alive? And that reflection can be painful, and it's really easy for us to just distract ourselves and say, yeah, I don't actually want to think about that, so I'll just get busy and do something else. Like I'm in a very reflective stage of my life, but right now I'm not by nature really reflective person. And so the quietest parts of my day, the nicest parts of my day are when I'm not having to think about what I'm thinking about. And then, when I get in my car, I've got time to reflect, or, I'm back in my room at night, then it all comes bubbling up again. And it's not unpleasant, but it's just, a lot of stuff I have to sort out. And so that reflection piece can be something that people try to avoid. And as a career practitioner, what you can do is build in space and just be the container and the person who's asking open-ended questions and just supporting them as they go a little bit more deeply and reflect on what's working and what's not. It's also really important to consider all your life roles. So you don't want to be focused as a career practitioner only on work, but you have to help your clients understand how work is going to interact with and be influenced by and impact the other areas of their life. And so to have work conversations or career conversations out of context is not helpful. You need to be able to work with your clients to understand how this change at work is going to impact relationships at home. It's going to impact roles with other people in the community. Maybe the mom was always the carpool driver, and now if she goes back to work or changes jobs or is working in a different location, she can't do that. So it's impacting other people. And so it's super important as career people for us to help people understand how any one change is going to impact their capacity, the challenge in all areas of their life. It's really important as well to support people on how to know themselves better from a career perspective. So when I'm doing an assessment, I typically wouldn't use just one tool or assess just one thing like personality. I want to know about skills, interests, values, personal style. Otherwise, people are making career decisions based on just one little slice of who they are. And if I had a career that only suited my personality, it didn't suit my skills, it didn't suit my values, it didn't suit, the other aspects of who I am, then it wouldn't be a very fulfilling career. So I like to try to look holistically when I'm working with my clients. Then, of course, we need to engage them in activities to explore opportunities. And these are the opportunities that might be within their community, might be further away, but need to fit with their lifestyle. And so if I'm working with someone who has said to me, I'm from BC, and I work with some Indigenous people up on the coast, and say, I don't want to leave the coast. This is my home, this is where my family is, this is where my life is, I don't want to leave, then it's crazy for me to be working with that person or encouraging them to be exploring occupations that don't exist out there. I need to instead help them pay attention to where are the needs in your community. How can we fill a niche that's not being met yet, perhaps by being entrepreneurial? How can you cobble together work that might come from 2 or 3 income sources on the coast? Almost everyone has 2 or 3 jobs and is doing different things. So how do you tailor your career intervention to be suitable for the community that you're part of and for the people that you're working with and the stage of life that they're at? One of the things at this conference that people have come up to me for is to sign that little box for someone who travels for work. When my children were young, I would not work more than 10 minutes from their school. So my commuting circle was really tiny, and that was super important to me. And now, I work literally all over the world, but not at that stage of my life. So it's important that you understand what else is going on in someone's life when you're helping them make reasonable career decisions. Almost done here. We think about how much or how little to shift. So when I'm working with someone in the career engagement model, I'm trying to get them closer to that engagement zone. But I have to decide, is it challenge that we're going to try to bump down a notch or bump up a notch? Or is it capacity that we need to build? And is it capacity within the individual, which would be training? the capacity within the organization, which might be hiring other people for a team or putting a bigger budget to a project or coming up with some better technology to support what we're asking someone to do, is the capacity within the person's home. I often work with women who, and I did not come from a privileged upbringing, like let's make that really clear. Nobody on my street went to university. It was very, very, humble beginnings. So I didn't even know what a housekeeper would be. But when I was at a stage of my life where I was working full-time, had these parents in 2 different hospitals, had kids I was running around, a friend of mine said, why don't you get a housekeeper? And I've kept a housekeeper ever since, because wow, that's nice. I really like that there's one day of the week that my house is clean. And I would way rather do the work that I do, where I can earn money doing what I do and what I'm good at doing, and then share that with other people who also do what they're doing. So I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I'm saying a lot of people don't even consider those possibilities, and yet they're going to give up their job because they don't have the capacity to do these other things in their family. And I think, well, why not give up some of the income that's coming from your job to pay for some of these other supports that you might need? You're still going to be better off than if you were on social assistance. I had a sister-in-law, for example, that gave up a job because she couldn't, the buses didn't run to get her to work for the early shift. And she was on call, and sometimes she got called for the early shift, so she said, this isn't working, and gave up her job. And I said, you can take a taxi. Like, why would you not take a taxi and say it costs 1 hour of your pay, and then you're getting 7 hours of pay? Like, why wouldn't we do that? So I think that as career practitioners, we need to be having those kinds of really practical, pragmatic conversations with people, because it's not even on their radar screen, right? They're not even thinking. Like I'm not from a taxi-taking family, right? I'm not from having a housekeeper family. I'm not from an ordering groceries online family. But are there some things out there you could do that would actually make your life more manageable, that would then allow you to be more fully engaged at work and in life and growing in your career and taking opportunities? So I think we need to have those kinds of discussions and support people in making those decisions. And then we start looking at the capacity piece. So the individual capacity, for me, ebbs and flows. There was a point in time on our team, this is, how the royal family and people like that, they don't let everyone fly in this same plane at the same time. Yeah, our entire project team was in a car accident together. And, it's not a team building activity. I'm not suggesting you would want to do this for bonding. And we all got concussions. And so we're in a business where we use our heads. And, we had all of these projects that we had to be able to think before. And none of us were, like brain dead. But we were thinking way more slowly than we used to for a long time. Like for 2 years it took us to recover from these concussions. And so we lost one team member completely. Like she didn't die, she just quit. And then, 3 of us sort of lived too long. But stuff like that happens. Like you lose capacity that has nothing to do with your education or your skills or your desire to do the job, but you get sick, you get a cancer diagnosis, someone in your family dies. Stuff happens, and that changes our capacity. So then the organization has a choice to, how do we equip you to, how do we bolster that capacity? So can we hire another assistant to work with you? Can we take something off your plate and reduce the challenge a little bit? What can we do in order to make this workable so that you don't have to go off on medical leave or sick leave or stress leave? So when you start to look at it as not just an individual problem, but you look at it as a contextual problem, it opens up so many more solutions. And that's why I would really encourage people when you're working with clients to help them start to look at context and the organization they're working with. It's also important to take on an appropriate level of challenge. This photo would not be an appropriate level of challenge for me, although if any of you have been in BC, the grouse grind is something I'd like to try to do one day. It may not be an appropriate level of challenge, but I'm working toward it. But you take on something with the support, with somebody there to help you and coach you and guide you, that is appropriate. But if people are taking on something that's too big of a leap, of course it's going to be overwhelming. And if they're taking on something that's too easy, it's not going to keep them engaged. So, it's like that with skiing, it's like that with any, with whitewater rafting, it's like that with any activity. You have to figure out what's the right amount of challenge for the capacity you have. We always work with our clients to set short and long-term goals. It's something that we do, but equipping people to be thinking about those goals in terms of capacity and challenge. So, what's a short-term thing I can be doing to increase capacity? What's a short-term thing I can, and for me, it was this nurturing thing, and eating better, and being much more conscious of replenishing, like keeping up my resilience in order to be doing the crazy things I'm doing right now. For other people, it might be longer-term goals. I worked with a client once who had a grade 8 education, and through career exploration decided she wanted to be a high school PE teacher. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's a bit of a stretch, because she was, in her 30s. But I thought, okay, well, let's see where you're at right now. Can we get you a GED? Easy. She had her GED within a couple of months. So now I've got, instead of a grade 8 client, I've got a grade 12 client, so that's a bit closer to being a teacher. I'm not going to be able to get funding for an education degree, but I could get funding for her for a certificate in a community college that would give me university transfer credits. So we did that, and she worked through the summers, and so a year after she had grade 8, she actually was a year and a half through university. That was pretty cool. And then she was working for the university and, discovered she could get tuition waiver for the rest of it. She kept her marks up and got scholarships. So a couple of years later, she had a university degree from grade 8 education. So if we look at someone, we don't see the potential in them, and we don't know how to navigate the systems that they're going to need to navigate, then we keep someone stuck at a level there's no reason in the world to be stuck at. I could still be a telephone operator. Well, to be honest, I would have retired by now and have a pension. So, had I stayed on that route, it would have been good. My mom at my master's grad, I had a business at that point in time. I had all my staff filling an entire row at the university. My mom's in wheelchair parking, and I leaned down to give her a hug, and she said, "Now do you think BC Tel would hire you back?" The people around us do not understand our careers. They look crazy to people. And my poor mom in hospital for all those years couldn't figure out what she'd done wrong that I couldn't keep a job. And, we've invested all this in education, and look at her. She just keeps, needing another job. And so the key is then to avoid disengagement. So, the focus for sure is on engagement, but those yellow and orange bars give us plenty of room to know when we're moving toward disengagement. There's no reason to ever be fully disengaged if we're learning to attend to the process and making small adjustments along the way. So I'm really hoping that this is something that will be useful for you personally in your own career, as I apply it to myself all the time when I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I go back to my hotel room and think that didn't go very well, or, why am I doing this? Then I think about it through an engagement lens. And when I'm really excited about something, I pause and think about that as well, and think, wow, what was it about that made me feel alive and got me engaged? And so the whole trick to career management is just to do more of the stuff that's good and less of the stuff that isn't. It's never going to be perfect. But if we can do that for ourselves and then model that for our clients, there's no reason that we can't feel engaged. So in mobilizing the village, for individuals, what we want to do is support their personal career engagement. For influencers, we want to equip them to help maximize the engagement of the people that they're influencing. And for systems, we want to help them embed career engagement practices so that they'll be able to be building the career development culture that we would all like to see. So I'm going to end there, but I'd like to leave people with thinking about their pearls of wisdom. And so I would encourage you, if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear some, but what pearl will you take away from thinking about career